The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Text 166 177. WhatsApp, same number, 166 177. If you're WhatsApping, by the way, you'll need us in your contacts. That way we can reply to you. Email studio@manxradio.com. Call 66 13 68. It's Mannin Line today. Open line till 1. So the floor is yours, whatever you want to talk about. Did you hear Kate Lord Brennan this morning, Cabinet Office Minister, talking about this year's government conference, which is going to be at the Comis Hotel. Will you be going? Phil dropped me a note and just said, looking at the vessel finder, it's nice to see on a day when the steam packet's cancelled that both Stena ships are operating a full schedule between Belfast and Birkenhead. Perhaps when a decision is taken that it's not safe to operate to Heysham, Manxman could go to Liverpool under exceptional circumstances, seeing as we've spent £250 million, crikey, on a new ferry terminal there, says Big Phil. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. And also, the trouble is with Manxman, Phil, you can't unload freight from Liverpool, so it's only a passenger ferry terminal. But I get the point, and we just wonder what it is. Is it the fact that the Manxman, because of the weather, the Manxman may struggle to get into Heysham in this weather? Obviously, Mannan's heading to Liverpool this afternoon, 3 o'clock, but Manxman didn't go to Heysham this morning. Is it because they pranged the Manxman at Heysham, and they really don't want to do that again? Expensive boat now. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Seems the autumn's nearly here.
Well, meteorological autumn started a couple of weeks ago, didn't it?
Yeah. Just before I talk about assisted dying, I just heard before, the news story about Portsmouth and Port Erin, with people being arrested. I'm just wondering, as far as I know, there's no massive gun crime on the island, and there's no massive knife crime. In fact, to be honest, I think we're one of the least crime-filled places in terms of square footage in the world. So just why do we need militarized armed police pointing rifles at people's backs with their hands on their head? It kind of looked like something you'd expect, something like Jean-Charles de Menezes, if you remember in 2005, a Brazilian electrician who was mistakenly shot dead by London police because they mistook him for a terrorist.
Well, I suppose the constabulary can't win either way. I mean, the thing is, obviously something fairly important happened in the south at the weekend. Something was going on, and they obviously thought that an armed presence was necessary. I mean, I have to say, when I saw the video of it, it looked a little bit incongruous, but obviously we don't know what happened. We don't know what was going on. Obviously, the bomb squad was called from across, so we don't... Obviously, something quite big was happening, but we don't quite know what.
No, it's just, I don't know, it just for a place like the Isle of Man, to go to that default almost seems like a copy and paste from the London Metropolitan Police. It's hardly the same. They do have a problem for whatever reason there is that the UK has this problem, but we certainly don't, as far as I can see, unless they know something we don't.
Again, I'm not certainly going to preempt what may possibly have happened, but let's just say drugs were involved. Now, the people who are involved in drugs have been known to carry firearms, so who knows what was going on?
Well, I mean, it was also interesting. It was mentioned that there was, I suppose you could call it a 100-metre access zone around the area.
Yes,
it's sort of interesting based on what we've talked about recently.
But no, I take your point in that the fact is the whole thing didn't look very Manx, did it?
No. I mean, that could have been some rough area of England somewhere. Like, really? Port St Mary? Port Erin? I don't know. It didn't look like what would be a good fit for the Isle of Man, especially what we want to portray.
Yeah.
to, people that come here.
But I mean, having said that, I don't want to speak on behalf of any, but remember, the police's job, the constabulary's job, is to keep everybody safe. Everybody's safe. So they could probably say, well, it was mitigation. But point taken.
Yeah, I remember the word safe was used in Orwell's 1984 as well. And I just wonder, let's hope the police are under our control as an Isle of Man government and not across, because it kind of looked like a UK operation in some way. Anyway, just for assisted dying, I noticed in the Telegraph a couple of days ago, there's a title that can be looked at called State of End-of-Life Care in Britain Means We Are Not Ready for Assisted Dying, where UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting was speaking at the Financial Times Weekend Festival, and he spoke about the importance of making sure people aren't coerced into exercising their right to die because of a lack of support in end-of-life care. He said he's deeply uncomfortable with a whole series of practical questions. I think you and I have spoken a lot about that. And he was also mentioning that the Marie Curie charity described end-of-life care for people in the UK as patchy and inconsistent, and points to a crisis in palliative care. And also the burden of guilt. If people don't have ready access to that, will they just think, right, well, here's an easier option, whereas, every other thing hasn't been exhausted first.
I mean, you've heard me say many times, this is not a subject I'm in any way expert of, but all I'll say is that it's fairly incongruous to talk about it. Of course, today's World Suicide Prevention Day. And the number of people affected by suicide on the Isle of Man, well, what they say is, I'll stand up to suicide. They call it staggering. And they say suicide rates on the Isle of Man aren't decreasing. Yeah,
and as Ewan has noticed, there seems to be quite a few very big ticket legislation things going through on private members' bill. It does make you wonder if that seems to be a sort of an easier way to sort of slide legislation in without really going down the usual kind of full checks and balances.
Well, that's something in 2 years' time, when we're in the run-up to the 2026 election, maybe that's one of the things I'll ask other candidates. Have you got anything up your sleeve in the way of a private members' bill if you do get elected?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few things that have gone on that, as you've rightly said, weren't mentioned when they were trying to get into office.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, thanks very much, Andy.
Appreciate it, Julian. Thanks for being with us today. And Wilf's on now. Hi, Wilf.
Hi. It's just something I heard on the Mannin Line yesterday, and I thought, it's true. Is this believable or what? With this business of let's walk to work, let's bicycle to work, let's get on the buses and all this sort of thing, and don't use your car. I thought, where's the government coming from? Anything that loses money, they'll think about it and do it. I mean, they did this with cigarettes. I don't smoke, I never have smoked, so that doesn't matter. But they put big taxes on the tobacco and all the rest of it, and then telling you not to smoke. You've got taxes on fuel, on petrol, for your cars. Now, when they say, don't use your cars, then they're going to lose the taxes on the fuel that you weren't going to use, because you're not using it. And then if you got rid of your car or didn't use it or whatever, think of the revenue they lose on licenses for cars. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. I don't know.
Well, this is what they've come up with. They're just saying that they like, or what they're aiming towards, is less private vehicle use, and people should be using active travel, i.e. walking or cycling, or public transport.
Oh, right. So everybody will be late for work. Yeah, but the thing is this some stupid Green Party business? If we put everything together for the Green Party that they want, our contribution to the world, pollution, whatever I like to call it, it's like spitting in the sea. I mean, I don't know what percentage we are.
Well, I'll tell you, the UK, I mean, the UK, this is just the UK, is 2% of world emissions. So you can imagine how much we figure in that, probably less than a tenth.
Right. Right, okay. So, I mean, China's pumping it out, Russia's pumping it out, America's pumping it out, and Germany's pumping it out. They're creating more coal-fired. They're using more coal.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. For us to interfere with that, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. All it's doing is making people poorer on the Isle of Man for the sort of living that we used to have. They're kind of trying to take it away from you.
I've always thought people on the Isle of Man quite like driving around in cars. It's quite a car-friendly place. Lots of people like cars here.
Of course they do. Of course they do. And the thing is, though, well, Mr. Cannon's thing about let's have 15,000 more people, that's a minimum of 15,000 more cars. It won't be so nice then. Well, I don't know what it's like in Douglas. I mean, it must be worse in Douglas than it is in Ramsey. But in Ramsey, come towards the weekend, Thursday onwards through to Sunday, it's horrendous. They're trying to get around in Ramsey. I'm trying to find somewhere to park. I mean, and there's free parking as well. But
well, maybe that's behind it all. Maybe they want people to use their car less and get public transport into the centre of Ramsey or cycle there.
Okay, well, if you use it less, then you use less fuel, so they get less revenue off their fuel taxes.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
All right.
Well.
Okay, well, all right. Thanks for calling us today.
Is this meeting still on for this afternoon?
I'll see you this afternoon. I'll be in Ramsey. That'll be me with a carnation and a cup of coffee.
Fetch a recorder with you, and and the thing is, what time are you going to be here?
I'll be with you about 2:00, Wilf.
Right. Okay, that'll do.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Cheers. Let's see. Let me see. Andrew's with us now. Hi, Andrew.
Hello. I want to mention about armed police and the fact we need to have them on the island.
Yeah.
Cast your mind back to 2010, West Cumbria, when Richard Byrd went on the rampage in Whitehaven, then Egremont, Seascale, and then up the Esk Valley. At the time, the nearest armed officers were in Lancaster. They did quite well to get to West Cumbria in an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half. On the island, if we had something like that, we're on our own. So the police must carry arms. They don't carry them openly, but they must have access to them in their vehicles so that should anything like this occur on island, they can respond.
Yeah, I understand your thoughts on that. It's not something we've got a history of on the island, is it, though?
Well, in 2010, if you'd have said anything like that would happen in Cumbria, you just do not know when somebody's going to pick up a gun and let rip with it. It could happen next week in Douglas. It might never happen on the island, but you don't know, and the police must be prepared for it.
Okay, all right, appreciate that. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling today, Andrew. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you.
12:20, David's with us now. Hello, David.
Hi, Randy. Just quickly, I spotted today and Friday that was activity at Glenside / Summerhill Views. Now, my criticism here is that a great setting, great building, and gardens laid out lovely until now. The weeds are starting to grow up and there's nobody tendering it. So I just wondered, and I've asked the question, although the building's out to an agency, we don't know what the cost would be. And Friday and Monday, beds were being delivered and equipment was being delivered to Summerhill Views by the government department. So I just wondered what's going on. I would have thought that the contract for Summerhill Views would have included all the equipment. And I just wondered, I hope it's not an extra coming on top and somebody making more money out of it.
Yeah, you would have thought, wouldn't you, that if LV Care have got the contract to do it, that would include, or maybe it doesn't include the fixtures and fittings. Maybe we're in for that.
But we don't know, do we? Where the taxpayers, where the public and the health service here are providing all the ancillary stuff. We don't even know when it's going to be open, who's going to go there, who's going to staff it and stuff like that. And here we are, September, October, winter months are coming in, and people want to have security of going there and spending a good time in a new facility. They need, and they're in it to the run up to Christmas as well. I don't think the department are thinking about this issue, or the company. I'd love them, the health hooper, to come on and say what they're doing with it, what's it costing us.
Well, they always keep telling us that we're short of care home spaces.
Yeah, we probably are, and the opportunity here, because that's why they built the Salisbury one down in Douglas there, which is providing a need. And we need a balance there too, because I know people who have gone into homes and who maybe are no longer with us now. They're spending a fortune on their money, their assets, their house, having to sell properties to fund their care. Now, a lot of politicians were going to do something about this, but I've not heard nothing about that. And really, it should be an issue that's done before the election, and say to, where's the fairness of people who can afford it, the ones who can't, and the ones who sitting on assets.
I mean, that's a difficult line to tread, isn't it? And what do you say? Do you say that, somebody who is blatantly a multi-millionaire, what happens to them? It's always the people who are on the fringe, on the margin, that get caught.
Yeah, but the issue I get when people say to me about multimillionaires and some people is they paid their dues as well. You've got to realise that. They all think politicians are made of money or millionaires when they come out or go in. But don't forget, they're paying their dues on NI tax and stuff like that. And when you get to a certain age or a certain infirmity, you're going to need support, whether you're a millionaire or not. Yeah. You may be able to fund certain things if you got money in the bank and stuff like that. But it starts to dwindle when it's costing £1,000 a week.
You bet. Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Yep.
Good to hear from you. 23 minutes past 12. With the disruption of the Manxman not being able to berth in Heysham during this poor weather, but the Seacat being able to sail, why don't we have the Seacat back going to 2 sailings per day to Liverpool or Heysham to reduce the backlog and ease the disruption on people's travel plans? Seacat's already crewed, so it can't be hard to put an additional sailing on, says Texter 223. Again, I don't want to preempt what the steam packet would say, but I would probably think they'd say it's not that easy. As you said, there may be is there a full crew on, or is it just a watch on in the daytime as far as Mannin's concerned? Can the steam packet come clean about what's going on, says Roy? They're petrified to tell the public the truth about the Manxman. What happened? Here's H. Can I vent my frustration? I'm sick of receiving text messages and emails stating, due to the forecast adverse weather, your sailing is subject to possible disruption or cancellation. Sick of it, says H. The first moan letting us passengers up north know by 7 a.m. means you're already packed and just about ready to set off to Douglas. Flask sandwiches ready made, as was I this morning. Second moan is the last 2 sailings on the Manxman have been cancelled, and the next 2 are, you guessed it, subject to, etc., etc., etc. Yet Mannin can sail to Liverpool. Plus, we got the Ben McCree sitting patiently going nowhere. I managed to get a booking on tomorrow morning's boat, only to receive the same text and email about 2 minutes after booking it. Oh dear. Bonzo's on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Yes, well, of course, the issue of the steam packet, etc., I'm sure is one of the issues that won't be discussed at the Comin Party Congress up at the Comis next week.
Will you be going?
No. I went to the first one, and I must admit it met all my low expectations and more. I was listening to Kate Lord Brennan's interview this morning, and I was just flabbergasted. by the complete detachment from reality of it. The idea that a few hundred people, well, a few hundred of Comin's chums, from the Institute of Directors and Chamber of Commerce and such like, will be sitting there in the Comis clapping politely in a sort of Chinese party congress fashion to all the blather that they come out with, blah engagement, blah this, blah that, when all we have to do is look around and see the vast quantity of issues that actually need to be discussed and need to be addressed. But oh no, let's have our nice little Comin bubble with all our chums appreciating, and we can all slap on the back and have a lovely mutual admiration society. It is absolutely, well, if it wasn't for the fact that it was so dangerous and at this sort of critical moment for the Isle of Man, it would be laughable. But it's very much the kind of behaviour that you saw with Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette at Versailles. Except, of course, with this, they've actually been putting around the hat, trying to get other people to pay for the drinks and nibbles.
What do you think they hope to get out of it?
A sense of grandeur and importance. That's what it's there for. Like there's a saying about the drinks and nibbles. A couple of weeks ago, an advert was put around for the marvellous opportunity to sponsor the government conference, sponsoring by, was it $2,500? I think it was, for a drinks reception with nibbles, and another $2,000 for lunch. And I think it was $1,500 a day or something to sponsor the tea and coffee. So it is absolutely ridiculous. And if this is the kind of thinking, I'm not quite sure what you'd, thinking in quotation marks, that's happening, then God only knows what is going to happen to us when Rachel Reeves does her budget on the 30th of October.
But I just got to come back to my question. I know you were being facetious about saying a sense of grandeur, but genuinely, Bonzo, what do you think somebody somewhere in government has put this together for? I mean, why take all this time for 2 days, as you say, gating the Chamber of Commerce and the Institute of Directors and all the politicians and everybody up at the Comis for 2 days? At the end of it, what will be on the plus side of the agenda? What will they have achieved?
Well, actually, I wasn't being that facetious. It is an exercise in self-promotion and, to a great extent, self-delusion on the part of Comin and their sort of timid retinue who support them. It is not in any way, I think, thinking about reality. And of course it detaches itself from reality by not being accessible to most of the Isle of Man's population, indeed 99.99% of them, by putting it in a nice isolated place where you can't get to it by public transport, and you put it in and you hold it during the working day and the working week, so only the kind of people you want to be in the audience will be there.
Well, I'm sure, and again, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the government, but I will, but people like yourself who take a great deal of interest in the progress of the Isle of Man, if somebody like you is so... I was going to use something else, but it's so disinterested or uninterested that you don't wish to participate. Surely they would note that with concern.
You would hope, wouldn't you? But I doubt it.
I wonder. Anyway, the company, it's Marlborough Advisory. They've sponsored registration and breakfast. Marlborough Advisory, whoever they are, but I don't know who's paying for everything else, Bonzo.
Oh, I see. Those are the kind of people who advise you to to advise you on how to avoid inheritance tax.
Who knows?
In the UK. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Bonzo.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Appreciate it. This Isle of Man Government Conference is on next Tuesday and Wednesday at the Comis Hotel. Sort of thing they're talking about. The Chief Minister's going to be there doing a breakfast presentation, but they're talking on economic development. Tim Johnson's going to be there. There's going to be talks about national air and sea connectivity ambitions. Tim Crookall and Tim Johnston will be talking. Gary Cobb's going to talk about the Isle of Man Airport strategic updates. Brian Thompson from the Steam Packet's talking about the Steam Packet. There's a Q&A session, then economic strategy, talking about hospitality, leisure and retail, activating AI. Lyle Raxall from Digital Isle of Man's doing that. There's a Q&A from the Skills Board and Strategy. They're talking about the UNESCO Biosphere as well. Claire Barber, MHK, will be hosting that session. Then it's on to Wednesday with the future shape of the public service delivery. Andy Ralphs, the new Chief Exec Officer, the guy came from Plymouth, is talking about that on Wednesday. A roundtable discussion about what the role of government and what government services mean to you. Then it's Keeping Our Island Safe with Jane Paul Wilson. Immigration Services, Sandra Simpson, Head of Customs Immigration, is going to be talking about improvements and protections in immigration. There's also Seeing the Island from a Different Perspective. Deborah Heather, the Visit Isle of Man Chief Exec. An update from Orsted. John Galloway's going to be there from Orsted. And then a presentational Q&A talking about navigating opportunities in a new political landscape. That's from Paul Harrison, Senior Counsel and Exec Director at Lexington, a former Downing Street Press Secretary. That's next Tuesday and Wednesday at the Comis Hotel. I'm guessing they'd like to see you.
At the Isle of Man Creamery, we're proud to be a farmers' cooperative, owned and operated by our local farmer producers. The welfare of our animals is our top priority, and all our milk and dairy products are certified grass-fed, meaning the herd have more time outdoors roaming the pastures. We also only use bio-based milk cartons, so no fossil fuels are used in their production, plus we offer a full carton recycling service too. Isle of Man Creamery, crafted to perfection since 1934.
I've just called the Guernsey Bank, Skipton International, about our savings.
And did you get a helpful robot?
No. At Skipton International, you speak to a very helpful, real person.
That's refreshing these days.
Well, that's why I chose them, for the perfect combination of personal customer service and some of the best savings rates. All by calling 01481 730 730 or visit skiptoninternational.com.
Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the Guernsey Financial Services Commission and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. Details at dcs.gg. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, blowing a hoolie out there.
Come in for a bravig by the fire. Just stocked up at Hearth. Never been so warm.
Who's that? Hearth?
Aye, they've got kiln-dried hardwood for me log burner, Colombian coal and smokeless ovals for the open fire, kindling and firelighters, all delivered. Great value too.
All goes up the chimney anyway, so I pay more. I'll be giving Hearth a call.
Check their website as well. Just order and they deliver.
For all your fire fuel needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
They're designed to ride out the storms of the Irish Sea, the trawlers and fishing boats who farm the waters off our coast. So why did disaster overtake a Scottish boat and a crew of 7 in January 2000?
Major air and sea operation began at 6 o'clock last night after the Solway Harvester sent out a mayday call. Coast Guard say conditions at the time were horrendous.
Using recordings made at the time, the tragic story of the Solway Harvester. Why was she swamped by seas that should have been manageable? And what have we learned from the disaster? 5:30 this evening, the legacy of the Harvester.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
26 minutes before 1. The reason for using the Comis instead of the Villa is to make it difficult to attend. So MHKs don't have to listen to public's concerns over the mess that they're making of things. This is Frankie. Look at the Steam Packet. We were promised a fit-for-purpose, faster all-year-round boat to replace the Bent, and what have we got? Businesses are closing on a weekly basis due to the new boat, and all we get is it's an arm's-length company that's FOI exempt, says Francis. And Howard's on now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Just before I say what I want to say, well done, Bonzo. He was quite right in what he said. This is a backslapping ego trip for a lot of the government people that's in there, and they're bringing people in again to tell us what they should be doing. So, yes, well done, Bonzo. I totally agree with you there. And why, I know somebody's going to turn around and say, well, it's not going to cost us anything. But what's the idea of sponsoring all this and throwing sponsorship out as, it doesn't sit right with me. And again, as that chap or whoever's just said, out of the Comis, and that is a place where you can access only by your own personal transport, or taxi or otherwise. The average Joe Bloggs is working. He can't get out on the bus. There is a bus stop, but it's out in the middle of the main road, and you've got about half a mile walk just to the entrance. So nobody's going to walk out there if the weather's inclement. So they're pretty well guaranteed a self-serving audience and speaking to the already converted. And then they go round again after drinking tea and little sweeties and slapping each other on the back. And we'll still be where we were when they started, in Mysteryland. But anyway, what was come on for, and it was when this programme started, I had a feeling this was going to come on, about down Port Ed and Port St Mary.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the cases where some stones should be left unturned for the time being, because I think there's going to be some surprises in the near future. This is one case of where we should be letting the local police and the UK police get on with what they have to do. And as regards the Julian, when he said about armed police, well, if you had a system or circumstance where armed police were needed, are we not better having these people here trained on the island than having to wait for somebody to come in? And as Chris on the phone said to me, what happens if the boat doesn't sail? Well, the airport, I've seen the military come in helicopters and aircraft, so we're not stuck on that account. And the military will come in if the weather's not too clever. But this is one case, and what I've been hearing, it is from a reasonably reliable source, shall I say, but I'm not going to repeat it. And this is one time where just let the police get on with what they have, providing, and this is a big word, providing that it's not swept under the carpet.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, Howard. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Okay, take care.
Okay, good to hear from you. We're on Mannin Line today on Manx Radio, and Tony B's with us now. Hi, Tony. I've got Tony. Oh, hi, Tony. You're there. I found you. Hello, Tony.
Yeah. Hiya. You haven't got any travel plans, have you, Andy?
Why? No. I'm going to Ramsey today.
Well, I'm just wondering, because are you going to have be allowed to go to the Comis Hotel?
Me? They wouldn't want the likes of me there.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Is there anybody from the press who's going to be there to report back and tell us the truth?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, certainly there'll be a reporter from Manx Radio there trying to pick up some dry curly sandwiches, I would imagine, at some point.
Now, my question for him is, why did Kate Lord-Brennan skip past the issue of walking from the bus stop, active travel, to the Comis Hotel when she was asked it? I think that's appalling. And I think it's appalling that they're doing this hidden, if you like, on the side, but in plain view, but you can't come because we don't really want you there. I think the whole issue of government is falling apart. They're not telling the truth. They won't admit there's any problems. And I think Bonzo's hit it nail on the head. They want to have a little chat quietly offline with people who they don't want to invite over because it would show up those people as being part of their future plans or not part of their future plans. And it's just appalling. This should be something that's held in public in an available place where you can get to by public transport without having to walk 500 miles.
Well, the whole point about that, I mean, if they really wanted the public there, it will be easy to say we're going to put on a shuttle bus from the centre of Douglas 4 times a day if you want to go.
Correct, but did they offer that? No. Has anybody offered that? No. And the reason for that is because they'll tell you that, that would cost more money, but this is going to cost thousands of pounds anyway. So why don't you hold it in somewhere? And if you want to hold it in a hotel, hold it in a hotel. Put it in the centre of town. Don't put it out in where it's remote. And I'm not against the Comis Hotel. I think it's a lovely place and everything else. But there's no way of getting there. So I think one of the things on their agenda should be transportation. We've got buses that don't run, and I really don't understand why. I guess it's because people have left or whatever. Is that the case?
Well, there have been all sorts of rumours, but they've not been confirmed as to whether drivers have left.
Well, it doesn't really matter. The manager, whoever he is supposed to be in a position to manage. That means you have more drivers than you really need, and you manage those resources. So if he's not doing his manager's job, then somebody from government should step in and say, sorry, mate, you're not up to it, you need to leave. And we need to start doing that with all of these people. The DOI has failed us miserably with this boat. And I don't necessarily blame the steam packer. I just wish they'd tell the truth and say, yes, the boat's too big to get into Heysham.
Well, the thing is, I think Brian Thompson is a bit like Prometheus Chained, if you like. He's the chief exec, he's the managing director, but he can only do as much as he can do. Remember, he's tasked with making the steam packet, it's got to make money and he's got to look after the company. What the wider ambition, of course, that's Treasury, that's government. So, they wanted a bigger boat, and with that bigger boat comes, it's going to blow around a lot more. There's more windage, and that's, when you're going into a cramped place like Heysham, stuff is going to happen. So, what we thought might happen has happened, but we're stuck with a bigger boat now. So there's nothing really much we can do apart from lump it.
No, you can do something, Andy.
What?
We can rent this boat out as a short-haul cruise ship, which is what it really is, take the Ben back into service, and operate that properly on a regular basis. And stop buying big vessels. We don't need big vessels. You need smaller vessels. That's what you need, with less crew and less facilities. Because the problem is, who ordered the boat and who wrote out the design brief for it? Was it the Isle of Man steam packet, a technical person? Who was it? Or was it somebody from DOI with a wish list? I'd like to know that, because I think that's the person who we need to get in front of a committee and ask them what they thought they were thinking of, what was going through their mind. It just beggars belief that nobody in government saw this coming, and nobody saw a boat that size in the Irish Sea is probably not what you really want for a place like the Isle of Man, which is stuck in the middle of the Irish Sea.
Yeah.
Very difficult to get into shelter in the Isle of Man. If it's a northerly, you're going to go onto the southern shore. Where's the shelter? There is none. You've got to get in the lee of a headland somewhere, and there's not many of those that stick out that far. It beggars belief. I would like to know. I don't want to say we should get them all out and shoot them all, but what I want to do is find out, how did we get to this point? And just tell the truth. We made some mistakes. There are things you can do about it. You could lease that vessel out, the Manxman, quite easily.
So if somebody came out though in government or steam packet or wherever, I'm not saying who it might be or what they might say, but if somebody came out and said, actually, it was my fault, I take responsibility for it, wouldn't they just put themselves in the firing line?
No, if you remember this, they would. But the point is, the government should be open and honest. And I wouldn't say to the person, OK, we'll get rid of you, da-da-da-da-da. I'd get rid of the political person in charge who basically should have come forward and said, there's been a mistake made here. Because that's the person who should be representing the people. And Mr. Allenson and all his cohorts in the Treasury who are supposed to be overseeing this are a disgrace. He's never said a dicky bird about any of this. He waffles on about it being an arm's-length company. An arm's-length company with our money. And he doesn't seem to be worried about that. He's a disgrace, absolute disgrace.
So you reckon rent out the Manxman and bring the Ben back?
Rent out the Manxman, bring the Ben back, you'd get your tonnage up for your transport, bring the Arrow back in, so run that back and forwards to Heysham as fast as you can do it, to bring all the cargo in. That will give you a smaller boat, which is the Ben McCree, for people and passengers and cars, but much more manoeuvrable. Then go out and look for the right vessel, which hasn't got extra 6 decks on it, and it doesn't need to be that big. It needs to be capable. And if you look at all the number of passengers you can carry on these 3 vessels, have a good look at it, because there's not a lot of difference between the passenger numbers for Manxman and Mannin. Do you believe that? I didn't. A lot less cars.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Mannin is obviously a passenger vessel, but remember, the money is in freight, Tony. I would imagine Mannin barely breaks even. She uses high quality marine diesel, whereas but doesn't carry any of that high paying freight, and half of the time she's not full.
So that's the reason why you should be using the Arrow to be the freight boat, going back and forwards as fast as it possibly can, because you don't have to load cars. You can load the freight a lot quicker on the Arrow than you can. It's still a ro-ro. You can load it on and off a lot quicker than you can the Manxman, because you haven't got 500 people.
Okay.
Well, not that you definitely often get 500 people, but if you use the Arrow for freight, use the Mannin during the summer periods for sure, and any other time you can sail. Obviously, you can sail in the autumn, because it just did, or it's just going to, and it's going to Liverpool, despite the fact that our sail ship, which is what we should call it, can't sail because it can't get into a port with a wind from the northwest. And I can understand why. But the whole remit for this, who put this forward? And where did these ideas come from?
Okay.
Is this from people in the steam packet, or people in the DOI? I'd like to know.
All right.
I think a lot of other people would.
Appreciate it, Tony. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, all the best, man. And get your walking legs on if you're going to this conference.
13 minutes to 1 now. Susan's on now. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Andy. This idea from the DOI of getting us to, or trying to encourage us to use our cars less for day-to-day travel.
Yes.
Now, didn't this idea raise its ugly little head a couple of years ago, and they called it something like active living?
Active travel.
Active travel, that's it. So they want us to walk or cycle to work or to the shops.
Yeah, and there was a big scheme for employers who could get bikes through work up to a certain amount. So they were quite big on that. I've not spotted many MHKs using a bicycle, I'll be honest with you. I know Chris Thomas walks to government buildings every day, but I don't know many other MHKs that do.
No, but I mean, in my case, I live 15 miles away from where I work, and I live in Bluff and I work in Santon. Now, I had a look at the bus timetables today before ringing in, and at the moment I can get in my car, leave my house at 8:15 and be at my works well in time for my 9 o'clock start. Now, if I wanted to take the bus, I would have to take 2 at least different buses, and I would have to leave Ballaugh at 6:45 in the morning, and I would end up the furthest I could trace it really on a decent bus route was to Port Sodrick, and that would get me there at 8:15. Now, there may be a bus stop a bit nearer to where I work, but I would at least have to walk half a mile. Now, I like walking, so I can't walk 15 miles to work, and I certainly can't cycle 15 miles to work. I used to cycle 12 miles because I used to work at Whitehoe and I used to live at Glen Helen, and I used to cycle from Whitehoe to Glen Helen. But it's not the most pleasant journey on a push bike, especially on our main roads, because there is a lot of traffic, and some of the drivers aren't really all that thoughtful towards cyclists. So, I mean, this idea of encouraging us to do that needs an awful lot more thinking about before they even open their mouths and say this is what they want to do.
The thing is, Susan, when they say things like this, I mean, there are sometimes an idea pops along and it's palpable common sense. Everybody says, oh yes, that's quite easy, that's what we'll do, we'll change a few things. But in this, there's nothing. This just seems like a wish that you'd give at Christmas. There doesn't seem to be any structure to it. And you're somebody who likes cycling and walking.
It's fantasy land, isn't it, Andy? I mean, when I lived in Lincolnshire, which is flat, a lot of people will understand Lincolnshire is flat, I used to work 8 miles away from where I lived, and so I would push bike to work. Now, by the time you get to work, you're hot, you're sweaty, you have to have a change of clothes with you, you have to have somewhere where you can get washed or preferably showered. If you get showered and you're a lady like me with long hair, then, or even gentlemen with long hair, you have to be able to dry your hair. So you have to have all the facilities. So if they want people that live more than a mile or 2 miles away from where they work, then it's then on to the employers to provide facilities for them to freshen up and have change of clothing with them. And also then some people would like to take their lunch with them, so they'd have to have a blimmin' big bag with them, wouldn't they, to have all of that change of clothes. And, it is fantasy land.
Well, the thing is the last time, bearing in mind, if you go back 40, let's say 50 years, 60 years, there were a lot more people who cycled to work, purely because the money wasn't around to have vehicles. So a lot of people did cycle to work. So you're now looking at changing the habits that have been ingrained for 60 plus years. Whereas, if you'd said in the 1960s, I cycled to work, it wouldn't have been that odd. Nowadays, it's very much the exception.
You probably find that in the 1960s, when people cycled to work, they worked a couple of miles away from where they lived.
Yeah, good point.
And because we have our vehicles, we are able to. The majority of jobs, the sort of job that I do now, are in Douglas. So if you live sort of anywhere outside of I don't know, anywhere outside of, say, Glenvine sort of area, when you're talking about distance, then being able to cycle to work takes on a whole different role. So you have to have that extra clothing with you. You have to be able to freshen up, and you have to be fit.
So why do you think the government's flying this kite?
I don't think a lot of our government at the moment anyhow. There are so many things that they are coming up with, different weird and wonderful ideas that they seem to be floating as ideas and making the general public come onto the Mannin Line and saying, what on earth are they doing? What on earth is happening to this island? And it's not this island, it's this government, because they're not actually listening to the people and doing what the people need, so that this island runs nicely and sweetly and smoothly the way it should do and it could do.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Andy.
Good to hear from you. And Juan's on now. Hi, Juan.
Well, I think at the meeting, the government conference, they're having the sea strategy meeting on the Tuesday, because in case there's disruptions or cancellations, they can put it on the Wednesday.
Yes. Will you be going to the Comis, Juan?
Well, Andy, I have been to the last two, and we are talking about going to this. I have my tickets booked, and I do have to agree with Bonzo. Don't say to anyone that I have, but I do have to agree with Bonzo. The last two that I've been to, and basically the same format, you're having a 40-45 minute presentation on each subject, a 25 minutes PowerPoint, which is delivered to everyone, and then which was always advertised as a Q&A, turns out to be 20 minutes, and they have a Sligo presentation where people can put in their texts or questions. But there's no chance for rebuttal or anything like that. You have your question put in and then they move on. So it is, as Bonzo said, very, very much a nice, glamorous, lighted event.
But I'm sure, surely the government know that, if there doesn't seem to be any kind of tangible benefit to this, if nothing's going to come out of it, surely they know the public won't buy into this.
I think the first meeting that I went to, Andy, I remember actually phoning into the Mannin Line from the car park while I was there. And I spoke to the Chief Minister's meeting, which I went up to, and they said, oh, it's full, there's no space. I said, I'll hang around just to see. And when I got in there, it was half full. And I took the microphone and I said to Alf Cannon, I'm a bit perplexed at who you're trying to reach with this conference. It's on from 8:30 or 9 o'clock start till 4 o'clock. And you're talking about reaching out to the people of the island. Most people of the island, between Monday and Friday, between them hours, are out earning a living and working. So I didn't know who they're trying to reach with this. Most of the people who are in there are all sitting there with government ties on, walking around. They're sitting on tables, a few HKs, plonk themselves in, plonk themselves out. We had to shake Lewis Foster a couple of times to wake him up because he was falling asleep in the back seat. And I just find it a lot of money and expense and all shiny, but who are they trying to get at? And
you're not saying they're just doing this for show, surely?
Well, here's another point on this, Andy. It's like, they own the Villa Marina. The government, we own the Villa Marina.
Yeah.
Why is it now in a private hotel, which you've got to get transport to if they're talking about being green friendly? It doesn't add up. Okay. I could go on quite a bit, but I can hear the music, so I'll catch you next time.
Thank you, June. Good to hear from you. Totally agree with Andrew, says WhatsApper 610. The police must be ready just in case. And also regarding the steam packet, my granddaughter went to book a student ticket to go back to university via Liverpool on Saturday. She was told no tickets. She booked online, found out there were plenty of tickets available at full price, which is over double the price of a student ticket. Bit of a kick in the teeth for young people. No wonder so many of them are looking to leave the island permanently. What's the government doing to help them stay on the island, says Bernie. Thank you, Bernie. Good to hear from you. So that's it. Back tomorrow for another open line. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today.